Good morning everyone and welcome to the Friday Financial Review. Fee Part 2. So last week we discussed fees involved in managing your investments and pension portfolios. Just to remind you, the three main fees concern product provider, the financial advisor, and thirdly, the underlying investment funds. Today, I just want to give you an insight and education in the underlying investment funds and what you should be looking out for and what your financial advisor should be informing you. So firstly, what are these underlying investment funds? As an example, some of the big names in the industry: BlackRock, Vanguard, Fundsmith, Tilney, Rathbone, GAM, Fidelity, JP Morgan. I think you get the idea. So within your investments, within your pension, you will have exposure to some of these, all of these, and perhaps also some direct shares and bonds. Now, with funds, or shall we say with funds and trackers are ETFs, exchange traded funds, where they simply track an index like the FTSE 100 or the S&P 500. All of these have underlying costs within them. So how much do these big fund managers charge for you to go and invest in these funds? Okay, so for the purpose of clarity, I'm going to be using the terminology of BIPs. A BIP is basically a percentage point. So for example, 1% is 100 BIPs. There's a vast range when it comes to the underlying cost, the amount of BIPs you're charged, and it can start as low as 2 BIPs per annum and can go all the way up as high as 300 BIPs, which is 3%, and I've seen it sometimes 400 BIPs, which is 4%. Obviously, these really impact on your fund. So when you're going through your review, when you're looking at these funds, you must always ask the question, or more importantly, your advisor should be telling you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, all these underlying funds that you have will cost you an average of 50 bips, 100 bips, so on and so on. Of course, the cheapest fund at the scale is your ETFs, your trackers, because they do not require active management. They simply track an index or a basket of indices or a basket of commodities. Okay? And they're very cheap. 2 bips, 5 bips, 10 bips. You then go through to the other end of the spectrum, which are your actively managed funds. The ones that do it right in the industry, in my view, should only have an overall cost of no more than 100 bips, so that's 1%, okay? And again, the details should be displayed to you in these fact sheets, the reports, the reviews that you go through with your financial advisor, okay? Now, what's right and what's wrong? Always a big debate. Is the cheapest the best? Is something in the middle? Or is it the most expensive the best? True, the bottom line value of your pension and investments is what is yours. So some people would say, well, Paul, it doesn't matter how much fees I'm paying overall, as long as I'm making more than the next person. Well, that is true. It's a fair comment. But how do we gauge that? How do we measure that? Okay. So in my line of work, what I like to do is offer a choice. There are, yes, the very cost-conscious individuals who only want the cheapest, and for the most part, the cheapest can work out very well in the medium to long term. So these will be just your basket of ETFs, trackers, okay? Now, you then look at the active fund space, so people like Fundsmith, people like Fidelity, JP Morgan. These are active fund managers. Do they beat the index? Do they beat the benchmark? Unfortunately, in the wide world, there's probably only about 30, maybe no more than 40% of active managers worldwide who consistently beat the benchmark. But, you know, we advisors, we have the tools to find out and source out those fund managers, of course. So what I've seen in the last 10, 12 years really is within a portfolio, there's going to be space for both the active side and the trackers. And this really is the best of both worlds. And I feel personally, professionally, it's the way we should be going. But of course, I always offer choices to my clients depending on their needs. Now, what everyone should look out for, therefore, is really what is the average? What is a fair level of cost overall in these underlying investments? Well, to give you an example, my low-cost models, they come in at 15 bips, maybe 20 bips per annum. So that's 0.15%, 0.2%. My favorite models is the hybrid models. So that's a mixture of your trackers and your active fund management space. And they come in at around about 50 bips per annum. So now I've told you that just for the underlying funds, if you want low cost, it's going to be 15 bips, 20 bips. Best of both worlds, maybe 50 bips, perhaps 60 bips. If you purely go into the active space with none of the low cost assets, then you're entering the territory of excess of 100 bips. So we're talking about 1% plus. Is it the right way? It can be, okay? But if the fund managers aren't doing well, then you're paying really for their failures in a period of time, okay? So do watch out for that. Your advisor, again, should be able to convey that information to you, because in Europe, we now have MiFID II regulations, which came to force in 2018. And if your advisor isn't showing you the full cost of your underlying funds, then he or she is not doing their job properly, okay? I'm going to leave you with word of advice and wisdom for perhaps those clients who have underlying funds costs that are in excess of the 1% mark, or should we say, I've seen some where it's 1.5%, 2%, 2.5%, so 250 bips in this case. Ask your advisor, why are you paying so much? What's going on there? Is that fund manager still the right fund manager for me? Can you recommend me some better alternatives? Okay, there are a whole host of funds out there that one can use, really reputable fund managers. You're paying a fair fee and you're getting a fair deal. If your underlying investments alone cost you over 1.5%, 2%, and the best way to look at it is what we call the OCF, stands for ongoing charge of funds. Ask for that information. Okay, it has to be able to be provided to you. In circumstances where OCFs aren't provided, then the TER should be available. That's the total expense ratio. So that's basically what the fund manager takes, plus all the transactions he typically does in a past year, and is then calculated against the value of the fund and gives you a percentage. Okay, so if the TER OCF exceeds 1.5%, so that's 150 bips, or even 100 bips, you need to ask serious questions. Where's it going? Am I getting the performance? Can I do better? Speak to your advisor, because that's what a review is all about. Make sure you keep on top of it. And if you don't want to speak to your advisor, then you can speak to me. Yeah, fully qualified, fully regulated, and very, very open to have a conversation. So that brings an end to our fee part 2 about the underlying investments. Next week, we will finish on our fee series, and we'll be discussing my fees, the financial advisor's fees. Okay? So with that in mind, I'll leave you to have a wonderful Friday. Have a lovely weekend. I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.